Food can be just as addictive as alcohol or tobacco or drugs. Food can put its claws in you and really wreak havoc on your health like any other vice out there. And if you don't believe me, just listen to what it is that my guest today has to say. Jamie Morgan Reno is here with us with an incredible story of overcoming food addiction. And to look at you today, Jamie, I would never guess in a million years that you are a fellow food addict, recovery person, somebody who's been in those trenches. You absolutely look fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. In the trenches for sure, for many years.
Many, many, many years. And I want to talk before we get into when you realized that food was such a powerful substance for you, so intoxicating. I want to just ask you what your heaviest weight was. Let's set the plate there.
Well, to tell you my heaviest weight, I would have to tell you that I found scales that could weigh me, but I did not. I was easily over 400 pounds. I was topping off scales everywhere. And I would say I was probably around 420 in that range.
Yeah, that was my heaviest as well, 420. Welcome to the club. See, you and I, man, we're just kindred spirits here, Jamie. Okay, so what was life like for you at 420 pounds? For me, it was really limiting as much as I would like to tell you otherwise. Looking back, there was a lot of stuff and a lot of challenges that I didn't even realize at the time because it had become so normal. What was your 400-pound life like?
Oh, it was painful. It was sad. It was painful. It was hard. Everything about it was hard. It was hard to move my body. It was hard to get out of bed and physically do all the activities of life, just the basic activities of life. It was hard to hold conversations without getting out of breath. It was painful because, of course, the physical ailments and the weight bearing on my joints was extremely painful over time. And it was painful from a shame perspective. I would leave the house and perfect strangers would comment about me to me, shouting things across stores or parking lots about what I was doing or what I was wearing or how I moved my body or what I was buying to eat. I would have perfect strangers say, "Don't you think you shouldn't eat that?" or "Don't you think you should rethink that?" in my grocery cart. I broke chairs. I couldn't fit in airplane seats. I had people, seeing me coming down the airplane aisle and, looking totally, dreadful at me, like, "Oh my gosh, she could sit next to me and this is going to be horrible." It was just, you name it. It was just a life filled with pain.
Again, I mean, you're telling my story right now. But when people would make those comments to you, this is something that people don't understand, and I'm not really sure why people feel so inclined to make these comments or entitled to make them.
Right.
When people make those comments to you out of the blue, what did that feel like for you?
Like a sucker punch every
Mm.
time. And, it was interesting because I know I wasn't in denial. I knew what I was doing. I knew what I looked like in general. But every time it felt like, whoa, like you see what I see, like, oh, we're on this, we have this sort of, I had this alternate universe, I think, in my head that I thought I could do this life this way and get away with it. And then when somebody would call me out on it, even somebody in the family or a good friend in a very loving way and sort of an intervention way, I would still feel sucker punched. It was almost like my denial was so deep that I was really killing myself in so many ways that when somebody would call me out on it, no matter how they did it, it always felt like below the belt.
Is there one particular instance that stands out to you maybe more than others?
Yes, I was on a plane on the way to a conference, and of course I had to, get a seatbelt extender. And the man I was next to, it was a small plane. It was, one of those regional jets. And the man I was next to, he was sitting there, sort of just pushed over in the one side of the seat, and he just looked at me and he called the flight attendant and he said, I've got to change seats. And he just looked at me and he said, it's going to be more comfortable for both of us. And I was just mortified. I was just mortified because everyone was looking around. The stewardess was giving me a seatbelt extender. He was changing seats. He really wasn't a jerk about it, truly, but he could have been Santa Claus, Chuck, and I would have been offended. You know what I'm saying? I was at
Yeah.
that point. It was
Yeah. It's interesting to me though that that's the one that stands out to you more than others, and maybe it was just because of that. I mean, maybe a larger scale embarrassment because you're on a plane and there's so many people around. I would think that, some of the things that would leave a longer lasting scar would be those random comments, the really
Mhm.
sharp tongued comments that may have come when you were in the grocery store. I remember one time in particular, my family and I were at a Costco, and somebody came up and they were like, What are you, junk food addicts?" Which is exactly what we were. I mean, we were all well over 300 pounds at that point, but to hear that from somebody
Mhm.
was devastating. And then to be
Sure.
told by somebody who worked at a fast food restaurant that I ate too much was also equally devastating. I'm just surprised that for you, what hurt the most or what stands out the most was that particular experience when somebody was actually as kind as they could be about it.
Good point. And it's interesting because I think for many reasons that I'm learning now, I was so used to the bullying. I was so used to strangers and other kids calling me out and saying things, adults in my family, adults and the world saying things that were, quick and curt and off-putting and offensive. I think I was so desensitized to that those kind of rolled off my back, which obviously they didn't, but I thought they did back then, that when somebody actually could look at me and look at me in the eye and say something compassionate, I didn't know how to receive it. And it
Mm.
was just so that contradiction, I think, is very telling from me in my recovery now.
So you've got that wall built up, as a lot of us do when we are that weight, right? And we kind of put those blinders on and we have this almost skewed perspective. Like you said it very well at the top of the interview. Kind of, I know what I look like, but I'm surprised other people see the same thing, right? Like, which
Yeah,
is,
it's
you know,
crazy.
it's like people are looking in that same mirror that you do every single morning, and it's just it's interesting the way that we view ourselves, but on an emotional front. How
Mhm.
did you feel about yourself at that point, knowing that there were these offhanded remarks coming, knowing that you were challenged with your health? You probably at this point also realized that you were out of control. What
Yes.
was your sense of self-worth at that point?
It was very low. And I used a phrase with Dr. Lori Marvis when she interviewed me for her podcast, and it was, something to the effect of I didn't know that I was killing myself with food, but I wonder if that was really what I was doing. I was harming so much self harm going on, that maybe I did have that mindset of, the only thing worth doing in life is food related. And that was really, I think, probably my mindset at the time. Very low self esteem, very low self regard, and knowing how sick I was, knowing that I was getting sicker by the year, and still not quite at the bottom.
Mhm. Do you feel like did you make a conscious decision to kind of sacrifice your own happiness in an effort to please others as well? I know that's kind of a really complicated question, but I'll tell you why after I get your answer.
It makes perfect sense to me. Yes. I
Yeah.
didn't know who I was. I was totally in that codependent paradigm, right? Growing up the way I did, as um, the effects of the dysfunction of the home that I grew up in, and the people around me in my family and circle, was a lot of dysfunction, and I sort of sold out my true self, to self-protection. And I believe that self-protection came in the form of a shield of body fat. And that was self-protection for me, and disassociation from anything below the neck, any kind of feelings, any kind of body sensations below the neck, obviously, right? I was willing to overfeed myself so much to the point where I was almost immobile and so sick. And I was so willing to disassociate from my body and from anything that I would like to do. So of course, yeah, it was all about others, all about pleasing others or impressing others, or you know rejecting self.
Oh, I get it. And to be perfectly honest with you, that's something that I still kind of struggle with. It is like my inherent nature to want to fix a problem. Like I am a fixer if there ever was one, and I will fix something at all costs, even if it means like I've already worked a 12 or a 13-hour day and
Mhm.
somebody close to me is unhappy. Let me do everything in my power to, fix their problem, right? Even though all I want to do is just like take care of myself at that point and be okay. Or I will juggle my schedule like mad to accommodate somebody else um just because I guess sometimes I still struggle with, well, am I worth as much as this person? Like, and I think that a lot of that is residual carryover from being 420 pounds for all of those years.
For me, it is for sure. For
Yeah.
me, it is for sure. I am learning the world of boundary setting, the world of codependent recovery. I'm learning that world. That's the world I live in now. The food and the movement is baked in, so to speak. So I focus more on, or as much, I should say, on my codependent recovery, my boundary setting, learning about, all of the parts of me that I've rejected for most of my life up until the last 15 years.
You're listening to Food Psychology on the Exam Room Podcast. Hi, I'm Chuck Carroll. My guest is Jamie Morgan Reno. All right, so let's switch gears here and now talk more about the physical health that comes with this. This is really kind of the nuts and bolts of the Exam Room podcast here. So obviously, we know there's a lot of emotional stuff that's going with this, but being 420 pounds, there's a lot that comes with that in addition to having to find a scale that can go that high. I know that, man, I had a chart in my doctor's office, not even this thick. I mean, it was like this thick, right? I mean, this thing was just, it was like encyclopedia kind of thick. How many health challenges were you facing when you were at your heaviest?
Yeah. So great question, because I was also a little bit in denial when it came to those until the last year or two before I started recovery. Um, but I was dealing with high blood pressure, dealing with depression and anxiety, dealing with all kinds of joint and mobility issues, and by the very end of sort of my bottom phase, I had sleep apnea. I was pre-diabetic, which I now know is just non-insulin dependent diabetic. I would have easily tipped over into insulin dependent, I'm sure, within a year of that time. I had heart issues from years before I had taken diet pills, and they were concerned that it affected my ejection function. And had migraines, and it just all, you name it, I was living it by that point.
Dag on, girl. I
And
mean,
young,
yeah. Yeah,
only
so
in my early 30s.
oh, okay. See, now that's something that also a lot of people can't comprehend. It's like people say you're in your prime when you're in your 20s and you're in your 30s, but when you are that weight and you're struggling so much with all of those conditions, it really robs you of your prime, doesn't it? Did you feel like you were being gypped out of your prime at the time?
Yeah, I don't think I knew what a prime was. I I don't think I started hitting my prime until I was in my, no joke, until I was in my early 40s. I
Yeah.
feel more like I'm in my prime now and prime of life in so many ways in my 40s than I ever did even in my teens. I mean, I was obese from infancy. So for me, I never had a prime to kind of look to and think, oh, well, I should be living this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of makes you though appreciate what you have now so much more, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because I don't think like that is like, if there's a silver lining to struggling with your health for so long, it's that when you get to that other side, you can appreciate it so much more because you know how the other half has been. And
Hmm.
and so like
I lived
you
it.
yeah, right? So life 2.0 is pretty freaking sweet, is it not?
Absolutely. And I am mama bear about it. I fiercely protect it. I fiercely protect my health. I fiercely protect my recovery and all of the things that go with it, and all of the behaviors and the activities and the requirements that I know keep me safe. I fiercely protect them.
So let's talk about all of those pre 2.0 conditions here. And were you on a lot of medication? You mentioned high blood pressure there. You mentioned joint problems. You mentioned depression. I think anxiety as well. Were you just on a cornucopia of pharmaceuticals?
Ironically, not yet.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
I was right about to be. I was on blood pressure medication,
Hmm.
and I was on. They had started after sudden loss of a family member. About 4 years before I began the weight loss journey, I was on, antidepressants and that kind of thing. They were trying to figure out the right one for me. But those are the only two at the time, which is really incredible.
You know what? That sounds about right as well. No problem there whatsoever. When you were prescribed though the high blood pressure medication, like I was super young when I went on pressure pills. I was like
Mhm.
14, right?
Mhm.
How old were you when you were given that prescription?
Oh, early 20s.
Okay.
Early 20s.
And
It was right around the time I graduated college.
do you remember that day and kind of how you felt leaving the doctor's office?
I do remember that day. And I remember, it was so interesting. I remember thinking, I didn't put it together until you asked me this question, but I remember thinking, well, this is what grandpa takes. And this is what I know mom's talked about taking. So it almost felt like this is what the family does. We take
Mm.
blood pressure medication. We take our blood pressure. We have a cuff at home. It's what we do. And I didn't realize how dysfunctional that was, right? How that thinking process was.
Yep. Some families they play board games, some families play cards, others watch movies. We check our blood pressure. We've got a cuff, no big deal.
Yeah, in our 20s, in our 20s.
Yeah, that's just what we do. Oh my goodness. I what did you do after you left the doctor's office that day? Did you go and pick something up, a treat to eat, so to speak?
Yes, there were so many times where I would leave, and it's so interesting and knowing what I know now, but I get it. I would leave doctor's appointments, I would leave a therapist appointment, and I would go and eat. I
Mm,
mean, just like cause effect. It was just right
mhm,
there all the time. And
mhm.
yeah, it was. I didn't understand it back then. I get it now.
Oh, absolutely. Food is medicine in both the best and the worst ways. That's exactly what the case may be. And I know that flipping through your YouTube channel, which is great, by the way. I love the vlog. That's what the kids call it these days. Gosh, I feel old. The vlog that you put up there is just so great, and you talk about the emotions and even just going into the grocery store and how that kind of makes you feel these days. I'm going to talk to you about all of that, but what was the tipping point for you? And let me kind of preface this by saying I get asked this all the time myself, and I can tell you that it's kind of a frustrating question because there's not just one particular thing.
Mm.
I can't even remember the one particular day when I was like, enough is enough. But for you, what was it that kind of pushed you over the edge and said, well, look, I've done all of this. I've lived through all of this. It's getting worse. I just can't take it anymore.
Mm. That was probably late 2007. I was in my early 30s, and I remember thinking, that still small voice inside me, maybe my soul, something spoke to me and said, if you don't do something now, you won't make it till 40. And I knew at that point that I was intentionally hurting myself.
Mm,
I knew at that point that I was so deep in what I now know as processed food addiction that I was intentionally hurting myself.
mhm,
And I thought, if I don't turn this, right the ship, it's I'm going to take myself down. And I had a choice to make, and I thought I have more to do here. I'm way too young, and I have more to do. I have more life to live, but the way I thought about it was I have more to give.
Did you wrestle at all, though? We've been talking about self-worth. Did you wrestle at all with, do I even want to live to see 40? Obviously, you made the different choice, but did you even ask yourself that question at any point?
Yes, yes. And I was so deep in these addictive foods that cause all of this emotional dysregulation. I was severely dysregulated from, life as it were, and some of the curveballs that life had thrown to me by that point. And I was deep in this place of not knowing how to process all the things that were coming at me after a lifetime of a lot of loss.
Mm.
And so for me, yeah, it was do I want to do this? Am I worth doing this? But that my soul was speaking to me saying, you have more to do here. There's more to do here.
So we've kind of painted these addictive foods with broad strokes here, but let's put some more fine tuning on this canvas that is your story. When we talk about these really heavily addictive foods for you, what were the ones that you struggled with the most? Which ones really called out to you?
Anything, all the baked goods.
Sweet tooth, eh?
Any of the sugary, sugary, fatty concoctions. Those were my downfall. Donuts. A donut was my kryptonite.
Mm.
And anything associated with a baked good would be my kryptonite.
Not so much salty. So you weren't like a drive-through queen, the same way that I was the king of the drive-through. That wasn't your jam. If you were doing it,
Actually,
yeah.
as
Oh,
my addiction progressed and got really in the severe phase, I was the drive-through queen.
here we go. All right.
2-3 times a day. That's why I feel like kindred spirits with you. And that's why even Chef AJ was like, you got to talk to Chef Carroll. Because you guys were like this, 2-3 times a day. I would use my cell phone and like mock that I was on the phone with my family and that I was taking their order, and then I would order 2 and 3 meals. Yeah.
Girl.
Not every time,
Oh.
but when I was feeling really vulnerable and like I needed 2 or 3 meals worth, I would just act like I just put the phone down and this is what my family wanted to eat.
I am actually really impressed with you right now. I had a lie at the ready, but I wasn't like acting when I was there. Like, I mean, I got called out on it one time and I was able to pull that lie right out of my pocket. But for you to go through those theatrics
Not every
when you were
time.
at the drive-through, I
Yep,
mean,
when I was feeling real vulnerable and I did not want anyone to know. Yep.
that is commitment. What was your go-to at the drive-through? For me, I mean, the order never wavered. Did you have a standard go-to, or were you kind of a variety as the spice of life person?
No, I was a cheeseburgers and pizza kind of gal. Cheeseburger, pizza, French fries. That was my jam. So any combination of those. Pizza wasn't really a drive-through thing much, but the burger situation, I lived at the time in the Chicago-Milwaukee corridor, so you're talking about all kinds of cheese curds and fried things and cheddar burger thing. I mean, any of it. It was just off to the races. Italian beef sandwiches, steak sandwiches, that kind of meat, cheese, bread, ketchup, and pizza, and then baked goods, all kinds of baked goods. It didn't matter.
Oh,
If it
man,
was sugar and fat combined with some kind of icing, it was good to go.
sugar, fat, and those meats and cheeses. I mean, you're gonna throw a sodium bomb in there. You're hitting that whole SOS
Oh,
trifecta. I mean, my goodness gracious,
yes, it was.
three
And it
for
was
three.
the deepest part of my addiction. I would start out at Panera Bread in the drive-thru in the morning and get a box of different baked goods. And then by lunch, it would be some sort of cheeseburger. Dinner would be pizza. There'd be some fried chicken in there somewhere, some chicken strips somewhere. I mean, it was drive-through meals 2 to 3 times a day at the deepest part of it.
Have you ever added up how many calories a day you were eating?
You know what I did after I listened to one of your interviews? I sat down and I listened and I started to add it up. I must have been over 7,000
Yep.
on a given day.
Yep. And you have no idea at the time, do you? And then when you see it on paper, you're like, oh my God.
Well,
That is
knowing what I know
crazy.
now, right? Knowing what I know, how many,
Yeah.
it's like I was eating a whole week's worth
Yeah, right.
of intake in one day.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. You mentioned Panera. Was that every single day for you? Were you kind of on a first name basis with the crew there?
Not with Panera, no. Panera was
Okay.
maybe a once a week gig, but the people at the gas station, that I would buy. You know, gas stations in Wisconsin had like the whole bakery inside the gas station. And I was
I
like,
did
you know
not
what,
know this.
this is a good place to buy my food. I thought this is, you know, something that was appropriate, I thought. So yes, they knew me. They knew all of my orders. They would say, oh, we have your special whatever cookie in today. And I would be mortified and then still buy it and eat it.
Mm.
So yeah, it was I was a walking contradiction, right? You know, an addict. I was deeply in my addiction, totally filled with shame, and yet completely in denial. Like, you see this too?
Yeah.
What? Like, it was
Yeah.
just, it's classic.
Did you realize that you were an addict at that point? I mean, obviously there's shame that comes there. I was a good number of years into my journey before I realized like, oh crap, like I'm fully addicted. And I do remember that epiphany very clearly. When did it strike you like, oh
Mm.
crap, I'm hooked?
Yes. Well, it was probably 2017. I hadn't found my way into the world of formal recovery, like 12-step recovery and some of those other things. And I'm not affiliated with any of the 12-step groups in food recovery. However, I learned a lot from them. But it was probably Chef AJ. It was probably back in 2017 when she played one of the interviews. I think it was with Dr. Jeff Novick, and he talked about, or Jeff Novick, the dietitian, and he talked about how you, you know, like the way that you will come down from food and the implications in your bloodstream from the food leaving your bloodstream can cause all kinds of emotional dysregulation. And I remember I was like cleaning my house, listening to the interview or the talk, and I just looked up and I thought, that sounds like me. Like, I'm really irritable all the time when I don't, when I come off certain food. Because back then I was still trying to moderate processed food. And I remember I would be like hangry and irritable. I hadn't found whole food plant-based quite yet. And so I was leaning that way, but I wasn't there all the way yet. And so I had all these issues with food. I had the food monkey on my back 24/7. I was managing the new, lifestyle. I was maintaining weight loss, but I was white knuckling. So I was essentially a white knuckle dry drunk around food, and I didn't know it. So when I heard this and I started to actually read more about processed food addiction, and then I found my way into codependent recovery, and that has a lot of interaction and cross pollination with alcoholism recovery, just because you want to learn about what, the thing that ails you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And from childhood. And it wasn't my alcohol, wasn't my addiction, but it was in my family and in my life. And so when I learned about alcoholism, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a dry drunk food addict. Like, I'm a food alcoholic. Like, I'm a really, really, really severe food alcoholic. It was just like, it was an epiphany. Like, remember that scene from Clueless where she walks in front of the fountain and the fountain turns on? That was what I felt like. It was like the lights came on, the angels sang, the waterworks started. It was like, oh my gosh, like I got it. I finally understood it. And that's when I realized, okay, alcoholics can't have a drop of alcohol, so I can't eat these foods. Like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest with you, no, I don't remember that scene in Clueless. That's not really my kind of movie, but I do know the feeling that you're talking about. That's for sure. Let's talk about the emotions though, that detox. I remember it just being hell and torture. And I use those feelings to this day to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow, because I never have to want to go through that withdrawal period again. What was that like for you? I mean, you basically just said that it wasn't pleasant, but I mean, give me some specifics there. What was that range of emotion for you?
Depends on what. Now I know it depends on what the food was, but if it was, maybe if it was a typical processed food meal, it'd be, anger, irritability, very quick, short fuse. I would be, sad, happy, everything in between, like, sort of bouncing all over the place. And I had worked with a counselor for many years by that point, and I started working with a counselor in 2008. This was 2017, 2018, when I was really realizing and putting all these pieces together. I had done assessments. I knew I didn't have mood disorders. I knew there wasn't some major psychological underlying issue. And I thought, why am I still showing up this way?
Mm.
And so, yeah, that pain, not to mention the joint issues, not to mention, maybe even breathing issues and that kind of thing where I just felt winded more. And I was so used to not feeling that way that I remember feeling that way after a particularly fatty meal when I was having, an American Dietetics Association wonderful woman, but a ADA dietitian telling me moderate these foods.
Mm-hmm.
You can have that slice of pizza, filled with dairy and gluten and sugar. You can have all that. Just, have your piece and move on. And I thought, well, sure, I've been sort of maintaining this weight, this number on the scale for a while. Oh, sure, I'll have it. And then I would just have a food monkey on my back for days, and I'd be irritable and prickly and kind of sad, and it didn't feel, and I would feel like I was white knuckling, like I was gripping food sobriety with all of my might.
Cripping food sobriety. I love the way you talk, man. It is colorful. I dig it. Yes, the moderation, though. I mean, that is something that a lot of people don't realize, and it is just my position. I can't speak again on behalf of the organization, but just it is my position that that is why so many of these diet plans do not work in the long term, because they do rely so heavily on moderation, which means that you can still eat that pizza, you can still eat those donuts, you can still eat all of that good stuff, but you just can't eat a lot of it. And as you said, though, when you're white knuckling and you're holding on to that food sobriety with everything that you have, eventually that grip is going to slip and you are going to give in to temptations, because one's going to hit you on the wrong daggone day and then the wheels come off. Do,
Oh,
do you think that that's kind of like why so many diets don't succeed in the long term?
for sure. Well, I know now, and from the research that I understand now, stress pathways, when they're activated, it's literally the addiction in action, right? When the stress pathways get activated, that fight or flight amygdala is going, and you will make choices based on relief of pain, which usually for me led right to the addictive foods, instead of understanding what's happening or de-stressing first and then finding a food that's going to agree, with your goals, or, with taking you away from those addictive foods. For me, though, yes, that it got to the point where I couldn't hold on anymore. But it was in the holding on that I became, the person I didn't like. That's the holding on. I was irritable. I was just rigid. I was fearful all the time of food. I had a food monkey on my back constantly whispering in my ear, go ahead, just have one. You can just have it. You can just do it. And I would, hear that voice, kind of pushing me and urging me to just, go ahead and get, find that pizza again. Just have that pizza. Have that ice cream. It's in the freezer. Just go ahead. Just you got this. You got this. Look, you've been this weight for years. You got this. I didn't have it.
Mm,
I
hmm.
didn't have it. So the white knuckling was actually almost as bad as losing the grip.
Oh yeah, hangry to a whole other thing. And it's funny, like that food monkey that you use. I use that angel on the shoulder and the devil on the other. And I always laugh, when I think about, like, there's a devil whispering in your ear to eat the angel food cake, right? Isn't there some irony there, right? And that's just going to
Totally.
completely impede your progress.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, that's just so crazy. What are some of the diets that you had tried prior to reaching whole food plant-based? Are you somebody who had really just, like, checked a lot of those different diet boxes and done a little bit of everything?
Yes, I was brought to my first dietitian and diet program probably I was not even, I don't even think I was 13 years old. And I was being put into Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig or uh, Nutrisystem. I think I tried at one point. I had tried one of those doctor supervised liquid diets at one point. Um, I had tried, I mean, yeah, you name it. I tried it. And I had also done, right before I found, food addiction recovery and eventually whole food plant-based. I had tried keto. I was on that, everyone's doing keto, and all these 20 something size zeros are doing keto, and I'm just going to buy beef tallow and cook my pork chops in it, and that'll be just fine. And I'm just going to hit my natural svelte weight doing that. And I really believed that would work. And I remember I did it religiously. I was just like fixed on my goal. 6 weeks I had done it, and I was like, yeah. And I put on a pair of pants to go out that I hadn't put on and since about 2 months, and they didn't fit. And I was like, I remember thinking, like, this isn't right. Well, and they told us that we could eat this way and lose weight. Like, why don't these pants fit? Like, it was just such a letdown. And of course, when I got back into my right brain, I'm like, how could that have possibly worked? Like,
Right.
you believe the hype, you believe the sell. And I remember even before the pants didn't fit, I remember I just didn't feel right. Like, I felt lethargic all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I was still food focused, super food focused. I didn't have freedom from it. And it just, the pants not fitting was just the icing on the cake.
Oh, God. That's just so brutal. I mean, what a letdown. I mean, you want to talk about letting all of the air out of the balloon. I mean, golly. I mean,
I remember.
you hope they get so high, and then another failed diet. Like, God, that's just the worst. You mentioned something that caught my attention there also. You mentioned when you were talking about all of these different diets that you tried, you were 13 when
Oh,
you
yeah.
did your first formal diet.
Yeah.
Teenage emotions are fragile, to say the least, to begin with. What was that experience like for you? I would imagine that was just like self-esteem shattering.
It was. It was. And I think, and I am not a victim, but I think as a woman and a young girl, in that, with this sort of hand that was dealt me, and the one that I perpetuated, it just made everything so much worse because of the expectations on young women to look a certain way, and on the way the media sort of grooms young women into sort of this ideal of beauty. And I was so not that ideal in every way. And so, yes, it was deeply shaming. It was just, life, sort of soul sucking, to be honest. I felt like I was this 12-year-old, 40-year-old. You know what I'm saying? I was around a bunch of 40, 50-year-old women, and they're all, trying to be kind and loving to me. And I just was like, I don't, like, you're not my peer group. I don't know what to do with any of this. And it just felt like I was growing up way too fast, and
Yeah,
I
right.
didn't know how to articulate that. And of course I just rejected it because I just wanted to be a kid doing kid stuff.
Yeah, how are you how in the world can anybody expect a teenager to relate to somebody who's in their 40s or 50s or even a little bit older than that, right? You're clearly not at home watching Golden Girls at that point. Like, what, how in the heck did anybody think that was a good idea?
Yeah. I think it came from a place of fear, mixed with love, right? On my mother's part, it came from a place of, I was here as a kid, and I don't want to see you grow up with this. And the reality was I was already living with it, and
Mm,
it was being modeled for me. Food addiction was being modeled for me. It's everywhere in my
mm.
family, those behaviors around food. So both sides of the family. So for me, it was there, it was modeled, and it was something where she could have taken me to anywhere, and I don't think it would have stuck, because I was an addict living in a drug den.
Let's flash forward to when you discovered whole food plant-based. When did that enter your life?
Well, I dabbled in it for a couple of years in 2012 after reading, I think this is everyone's standard. I read the China study, and then I watched Forks Over Knives, and then I was then I became a plant-based eater. And I really loved it. However, I got lazy with it. I didn't understand the science behind it. And I started eating way too much plant-based, meats and some of those meat alternatives. And sure enough, after a while, that shine on life that I had when I first went plant-based back then sort of dulled. and I didn't feel as good. I didn't have as much energy and had some hair and skin issues, and I just didn't feel great. And I remember I left the plant-based world and went in a different direction about 2014.
Mhm.
And then when I started again in 20, kind of leaning that way, 2017, and then fully by 2019, I was in. That was, where I was like, okay, we're looking at the whole nutrient density profile of this diet. And this is, whole unprocessed plant-based. So now if I'm eating tofu, it's rare and it's measured, and the rest of it is just whole, nutritious, nutrient filled food.
So we know about your love of donuts. We know about your love of cheeseburgers and pizza. Now you're eating something completely different. What is your plate looking like today?
Today, let's see, breakfast was a mix of a bunch of raw cabbage and kohlrabi and carrots and broccoli, with some chickpeas and some quinoa. I will have tofu scramble once a week. I will make, a quinoa and raw veggie and steamed broccoli kind of tomato-based Italian dish. It could look like, for lunch, it could look like a fat-free refried bean burrito that I make at home. It could look like, let's see, I will make once a week a gluten-free, dairy-free, whole food kind of pizza concoction that's filled with veggies. And that's just amazing. I make lots of just bright, colorful mixes of foods that are varied in their plants, varied in their nutrients, and really make me feel vibrant.
So when you're eating these foods and you're crafting your menu now, does it give you any sort of concern to replicate the recipes that you once were eating with far healthier options? Like, do you get nervous because you used to eat, burgers, right?
Mm.
Would a veggie burger that's whole food plant based, would you worry that that could be a trigger for you?
Yeah,
And yeah, okay, talk
good
to me
question.
about that.
That's a good question. Yeah. And again, trial and error for me. So I don't make the plant-based burgers often. If I do, it's maybe a couple times a year. The reason is they're a lot of work. I don't know about you and any recipes you've had. They're a lot of work. So if I do, I make maybe a batch, two batches worth, and then I eat off of them. But I've noticed that the whole idea of concocting it, even if it's on lettuce wrap or even if it's on a gluten-free bun, that my husband will eat or I'll have part of, even if those things, it's still, because it reminds me so much of it, I will be thinking about that burger after I ate it. And
Mhm.
that to me is a telltale sign. The same thing with like air fried potatoes. If I'm dipping some sort of potato looking stick thing into it's it's a little triggering. For me, because the ingredients are so clean, the pizza thing actually doesn't. I enjoy it and move on. But again, it is super clean, super specific, and I make it in a certain way that, you know, that it's really about the veggies. So
Yeah.
for me, that doesn't really stick. But yes, so I have never tried any of those plant-based dessert concoctions, like to mimic any baked goods. Even if it's sugar-free or whatever, I won't do it. I do, ice the natural fruit sorbets and those kinds of things. I'll do those once a week, maybe. And I'll have to be careful. I have to be honest with myself about that, right? And
Mhm.
how, okay, this is kind of reminding me of things I used to love, so I have to be careful with this. But the rest of it, I stay away from a lot of like the recipes that reminded me of the old days food.
Two schools of thought there is one, yeah, it absolutely does, conjure up emotions of fear that you will revert back to your old ways, right? But there's also this part of me now that knows that even though there is that worry, if I stick exclusively to these healthier versions,
Mhm.
then I know with 100% certainty that they will not harm me. They themselves will not bring me
Right.
physical harm. And so there is comfort that comes with that. And when I was much earlier on in this journey, like I was scared to eat a wrap, like any kind of wrap, because I was such a Taco Bell junkie.
Mhm.
Anything that reminded me of a burrito from Taco Bell, just as you said, even a burger, with a lettuce bun, you would worry about, right? So I would worry about that. Within the last 6 months to a year, I found myself growing more comfortable with that. So I hope that you find comfort in that as well. And I can tell you that my cravings for those old foods certainly have not gotten any worse, right? I,
Mhm.
I don't feel the need to wake up in the middle of the night and make a run for the drive through.
Right.
You, though, will know, and I think you or anybody else, just speaking from experience here again, will recognize when you may be at a point when you can get comfortable like that. And that's a very individualized process and an individualized moment. So don't rush it if you're still concerned. But my hope for you, Jamie, is that at some point you will also kind of reach that conclusion where you do feel a little bit more comfortable eating those kinds of foods and be okay with it.
I appreciate that. And for me, the measurement that I use, I'm not worried I would ever go back to eating the way I did. That way, that level, that even those types of foods, right? Animal products. I'm not even worried about that because the food just makes me feel so sick. And I know I don't have, thanks to Dr. Bolsowitz, I know I don't have the gut flora anymore to process any of that. So for me, it's not even like it really would be severe illness immediately. So for
Yeah.
me, it's not, but it's also keeping that food monkey away at the zoo. Like he doesn't need to be on my back anymore. It's really about the food monkey for me.
How
Not
much
like
sorry to cut you off. How much more confidence do you have in yourself now that you won't be going back up that weight roller coaster and that you finally have found the path for you that works? How much more confidence do you have today versus the confidence that you would have when you were entertaining other diets at the beginning, back in the day?
yeah, a lot more confidence now. And it builds every day. It builds even, when I have some weeks where I know that because I've played with my breakfast, let's say, and I'm not eating enough of my usual breakfast because of work commitments or whatever it is, I will eat more later in the day. Or if I had a day where we're real busy and we're kind of on the road and I don't eat as much, even though I have my food with me, I don't eat as much because, whatever, things were distracting or got to doing something. The next day I'll be hungrier, right? Totally normal stuff, but that old programming will sink in, that diet mentality, like, oh gosh, I'm losing it. I'm losing my food sobriety maybe, or I need to be really, really vigilant and careful. No, I don't. I mean, I watch it, but it never go off the rails. It's more like your body is just telling you that you didn't have enough food today or yesterday, and it needs more food today. Feed it appropriately, and it will stop calling to you. And every time I do, because I give it foods that it knows exactly what to do with, um, I don't, it does, it just takes care of itself. And even those days that I feel like I'm out of balance because of life or a decision I made that, about my quantity of food, and I'll feel like sort of imbalanced, I'll get to the end of the week and everything's just fine. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
all status quo.
Yeah.
So enough of those weeks are being sewn together, Chuck. Over the last couple of years, 2, 3 years now, they're being sewn together, and I'm seeing what you're talking about.
Couple more things here with about 5 minutes that we have left. I watched a video on your YouTube channel, which is great. I think that the title of your YouTube channel is Such a Pretty Face, which I knew immediately what the reference was to. At least I think I do, because I heard similar thing. I never had anybody tell me I had a pretty face, but I knew exactly what you were talking about because I had heard similar things. But anyway, one of the videos that you put up there, your vlog, was about you were actually in the grocery store and you were talking about how that was kind of a danger zone for you. You were worried about being triggered there because of all of the sweets that you would see there, those end caps, as you were talking about there. For people who are currently in the struggle and really do have those kind of icky feelings when they go to the grocery store or even the gas station you were talking about. What kind of advice can you offer them for managing those real cravings when you're in those danger zones?
And so here's what I learned and where that came from. So there's a woman Dr. Jonah Ifland, who literally wrote the textbook on processed food addiction, and I've done a lot of work in her research and with her research. And what I understand now is about the cues and triggers in the environment. So if I'm in a heavily cued environment like a grocery store, and even though I know I'm hungry, I'm satiated, I know what that food, if it's a baked good or some kind of cookie or whatever it is, will do to me, I will still want to understand what that cue, seeing those things, visually seeing those things, what I understand how that cue affects me. And for me, now that cue doesn't affect me as deeply as it did before. But when I made that video, I was thinking about all of those people who are out there in a grocery store they don't understand the cues and triggers of an addiction. They're trying to sort of resist what's out there. And I needed to talk about how I relate it to the pain, and how even now, when I know what that food does to me, and I really want nothing to do with it, because I look at it the same way I would look at heroin or cocaine. Like that's insane. Why would I use that? It's the same thing with, why would I use that food? Same thing. But I wanted to relate it and make that video to talk about the pain. I always relate it to the pain. When I see those foods, those baked goods, I know I'm in a acute environment. I know that my visual sensors are being assaulted with all of these, triggers, smells, sights, sounds, all of these things of the foods that I used to eat. So I will remind myself, hey, what, that food really makes me sick. That food is the path to pain. And understanding Dr. Ifland's research really gave me the missing pieces so that I didn't get down on myself. And I didn't get down and say, why can't I resist this? Or what's wrong with me? Why am I not, stronger right now? It's nothing wrong with me. It's my brain is wired to be cued and triggered by the processed foods I see in front of me. Just like a heroin addict is going to be cued and triggered if they're in heroin debt.
Mm-hmm.
So mm-hmm. I shore myself up with self-talk. That's what that video was all about.
Yeah, I love that video, and I love those analogies that you're just talking about, and that goes back to our conversation about moderation, right? You're never going to, an alcoholic is never going to completely be able to get sober if they have that occasional drink. Can you imagine there being a program kind of like a point system for a diet where you can have so many beers a week or so many glasses of wine and still be considered sober, or this is the path to sobriety? Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And yet we do view food so much differently. And I think that people can't really appreciate the extreme of that kind of analogy unless they've been in that type of position. And a lot of people, I think, actually are, Jamie, still in that position, and they just don't even realize it yet. Far more people than we even recognize is that. Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing.
Yeah. A couple housekeeping notes before we go. You mentioned that you were on blood pressure medication for a while and antidepressants. Are you off of all of your medication together now?
All my medication.
Yeah, good for you.
For many years now. For many years. And the supplements I take are actually at Dr. Barnard's recommendation from all of the research that they've done at PCRM and all of the amazing information I get on the podcast here.
Right on. Well, appreciate that. And final question is the fun one that I think a lot of people have been wondering since the beginning is, how much weight have you lost? You look absolutely ravishing. What's your total?
Thank you. I don't weigh myself on a scale recently. I would say based on the numbers, about over 250 pounds.
That's what I'm talking about. That is a great number, and I'm so happy for you. I am so thrilled for you that you have your life back. You have version 2.0 now, and it is sweet every single day. I'm so thrilled for you that you are on this journey, and I'm so even more excited that you were able to share it with us here today. I think that a lot of the exam roomies are going to find a lot of inspiration from your story and comfort, and recognizing that, hey, I'm not crazy. My brain is wired just like Jamie's, you know, and so like there's comfort that comes with that, and then the sense of hope that change is also possible. So thank you for being that catalyst for change today as well.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you for opening the door so stories like mine can come to the surface.
If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.